bring on former branch managers who have had experience creating really, really, really great recruiting cultures and really, really, really great sales cultures, and have them talk about that. So you'll be hearing from Rihanna Raymond and Nathan Alvarado on the second half of today's call. The first half, as always, is going to be teaching. There will be a lot of notes for today's call, so please get ready to take notes. If you're not able to take notes, make a note for yourself to rewatch the recording so you can take notes, because this call is jam-packed with information, as always. First thing that I want to mention is this quote that I heard by the great John Berghoff, Cutco alumni. I was at one of his trainings a few months ago, and he mentioned this quote that I thought was really powerful. It is, culture follows structure. I'll say it again. Culture follows structure. What does that mean? When I heard that, I was trying to digest it in a way that I could understand it, and the best way that I could relate to it was thinking about that same quote that you've all heard: when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So culture follows structure means actually taking the time to plan out the systems and the components of your culture ahead of time. If you don't take the time to think through the culture you're trying to build or you're aiming to build, then what will likely happen is that you will get swept into the summer, and bullets will start flying, and you won't have the time to actually think about what it is you're creating from a culture standpoint, and you'll kind of be playing catch up. Many senior branches can relate to that because it's happened to them as a first-year branch. So the goal here is to give you the time and the space and the training to actually take a step back and say, okay, what kind of culture am I aiming to build this upcoming summer? We've talked a lot about this word dynamic. You've heard about it when I talked about dynamic mindset. It applies to culture as well, creating a dynamic culture. And it doesn't just happen, it is planned out and executed upon. I want you to think about building a house. You are the one that is building the house that your reps live in. And your framework is your culture. The stronger you build the framework, the stronger your culture will be. But first, before we dive into that framework, let's just make a quick case for culture. Now, I know many of you already understand from a theoretical standpoint why culture is important, but let's answer that question. Why is a dynamic culture a positive attribute to your overall team, and ultimately a factor to the success of your team and you as a manager? So this is your first opportunity to win that book. I would love to have 1 or 2 volunteers to answer this question. Why is a dynamic culture a positive attribute to your overall team, and ultimately a factor to success of your team and you as the manager? Christina.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So why I think the dynamic culture is important to your team is because there's a lot of times where you're not going to be able to be on top of your team 24/7, and you're going to be doing a lot of things behind the scenes, basically. So when you have a strong and dynamic culture, things will still be running like you want them to run, even if you're not there, and standards will be upheld, basically, even if you're not in the room. So that's the kind of culture, dynamic culture, that kind of goes even if you're not there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't even need a second volunteer here because you hit it right on the head, Christina. And I actually wrote down in response to that question, culture has the ability to work for you. Just like you said, Christina, it's what operates when you're not there or when you're not able to give your full attention to everybody. It is what keeps the ship moving in the right direction, even when you're not at the steering wheel. It also creates retention. It creates a positive PR culture. It creates a positive overall experience, which amplifies our brand as a company. And it also makes your experience and the experience of your reps a lot more fun. So again, I'll repeat what I said in the beginning. Culture has the ability to work for you. It is what keeps the ship moving in the right direction, even when you're not at the steering wheel. And as much as you like to be at the steering wheel at all times during the summer, when you are a one-man or one-woman show in the early stages of the summer, doing every single operation before you can delegate, oftentimes it's difficult to be in every place at every time. So when you can really be intentional about the culture you're creating, you'll find that people actually show up and do the right thing without you even asking, because you've taken the steps to create that culture. Going back to this house example that I shared with you in the beginning, that framework, again, the stronger you build that framework, the stronger your culture will be. Well, what is the foundation of that framework? What makes up the foundation of that culture? There are 4 components that I believe are the keys to this framework. Now, there might be additional ones, but from my experience working with branches, observing district offices, observing divisions, this is what I boiled it down to. Number 1, standards and expectations. And standards and expectations, by the way, are how we, both I, the manager, and you, the rep, equaling we, the team, how we, the team, operate. Number 2, values. And values are the beliefs that drive our actions. Number 3, vision, which is what keeps us going. It's the target that we are as a team striving towards. And then 4, mission. It's the bigger picture. It's the deeper why. Now, these are not in really any particular order other than maybe mission following vision, but I'll repeat them one more time. Number 1, standards and expectations, which is how we, the team, both I, the manager, and you, the rep, operate. Number 2, values, the beliefs that drive our actions. Number 3, vision, what keeps us going. It's the target that we're striving towards. And number 4, mission, the bigger picture, the why. Now, culture, by the way, is a very broad term. And my goal today is to break it down for all of you as simple as possible. Before we dive into those 4 foundational topics I just shared with you, I want to encourage you to think of the different lenses of culture that we have in a vector office. I think there's probably about 6. There could be more, and you might want to operate under less, but I'm going to give you these 6 lenses. In other words, 6 areas of focus in the business that have a culture around them. And I'm going to share them in the order of importance that I believe is most important. So, number 1, the first lens is the lens of a professional culture. Number 2 is a recruiting culture. Number 3 is a sales culture. Number 4 is an inviting culture. Number 5 is a competitive culture. And number 6, and this is for some, it's not for all, a work hard, play hard culture. And I want to emphasize why I put this in order, and that the work hard, play hard comes last. And the professional culture comes first. That's why we talk about the importance of putting your office in the right spot, of dressing professionally, of having a firm handshake, of all of those things that we talked about in our last call, and you've heard your DM and DVM harp on time and time again, because professional cultures, am I freezing, by the way? No, you can hear me? Okay, for some reason, my thing says I'm not responding. So hopefully this records. So that's why a professional culture is number 1. And then of course you hear all the time, recruiting is the answer. That's number 2. And we'll cover that a little bit later, as will Nathan and Rihanna. Okay, sorry, can you guys hear me now? I just froze for a second. All right, cool. All right, going back to the 4 components of the framework that I talked about. Number 1, standards and expectations. These are the 2 biggest buzzwords I hear in the vector culture that are not properly defined. I hear all the time from managers, oh, I want to create an office with high standards and expectations. And when I dig a little bit deeper and I say, okay, what does that mean? I'm usually met with a blank stare. So let's break this down. Standards do not equal expectations. Standards come before the expectations.
Literally, this is so cool.
I'm going to mute somebody, whoever is, actually I can't mute because my computer is frozen. So whoever just said this is so cool, please mute yourself. Okay, So again, standards come before expectations. So you, the manager, uphold the standards. Your reps uphold the expectations. I'm going to repeat that. You, the manager, uphold the standards. Your reps uphold the expectations. So the standards are the baseline for what you tolerate. Say that again. The standards are the baseline for what you tolerate. Here is something that's really important to remember, and this is applicable in all areas of your life, especially in relationships. You get what you tolerate, and you duplicate what you tolerate. So if you don't uphold the standards of your office, and you actually lower your standards and tolerate worse behavior, that will duplicate. But when you uphold the high standards and your tolerance is high for what you believe is acceptable, that will also duplicate. Now, the expectations are actions that align with the set standards. So standards are the baseline, expectations are the actions that bring those standards to life. So here's an example. I, the manager, have high professional standards. So something that falls underneath that is that I don't tolerate tardiness. So then you, the rep, are held to high expectations, which means that you arrive on time. Make sense? Now, if you exceed expectations, that means you are arriving early. Here's another example. I, the manager, have high recruiting standards, which means I hit the goal PR set number each and every week. Now, I, as a manager, also have to uphold the expectations because I'm kind of the one man, one woman show here when it comes to PR calling until I'm really ramping up my PR callers. So I, the manager, PR call action until the number is hit. So in the first example I gave you, you saw the difference between the manager upholding the standards and the rep upholding the expectations. That will be the case in most sales cultures that you're building. But in the recruiting culture, oftentimes you, the manager, are also upholding the expectations, not just the standards. Okay, this is the second opportunity for group participation. We already have Christina winning one of the books. I would love to give somebody else the opportunity to win another book. So who would like to try an example of standard and expectations for a sales culture? And I'll give you the hint here. You as a manager will uphold the standard, and then you will expect the reps to uphold the expectation. So who would like to try that out? There's no wrong answers. You will get a book just for trying.
I can try.
Who's that, Ruth Ann?
It's Anna.
Anna. Oh, hey, Anna. I saw Ruth Ann on the thing.
Hi.
Okay. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Give it a try.
So the standard would be that your customers must be between the ages of 30 and 60, married, and own a home. And my expectations are that when you write that down on the QPR, that you won't lie to me, and you will withhold your truth and your integrity on who you're doing demos with.
Yeah, that is a great example. So you uphold the standard of what we call in the Northeast region, the MAC customer, and the Eastern region, the HM3 customer. I think there's different names all over, but you uphold that standard and the expectation of your reps that that's who they're going to be seeing. Great job. Great job. Does anybody else want to try?
I was thinking just the idea that the second half of the summer, when we're selling and stuff, that I'm trying to think of how you put it to your standards versus expectations. Just the idea that we're setting the standard that we're doing, that we say we're going to do so many demos a week and we complete them. So them following that expectation. Is that what you mean?
That would be a good example, but instead I would say you as the manager would set the standard of filling your schedule, or set the standard of doing, 3 demos a day, and then the expectation would be that your reps are actually following through on that. Or you could even unpack it some more and say the expectation is that if you do not have 3 demos a day, you're in the office phoning. Okay, does that make sense? So there's a lot of ways that you can spin this, but I just want to make sure that you guys are understanding the difference between standard and expectation, and that standard comes first, expectation comes second. Now, how to uphold high standards and expectations. This is where everyone gets tripped up, because I think everyone has the intention of upholding high expectations and high standards, but then when it actually comes time for reality, they're like, I don't know what to do. Everyone's older than me. I don't even know what to say, right? That happens a lot for branches, and it's always a great conversation to have. So here are 6 steps to upholding high standards and expectations. All right, number 1, define your standards and the subsequent expectations. And the worksheet that I shared in the branch group will help you do that. There's some journaling questions on there that to help you understand what are proper standards and expectations. Is it possible to have unrealistic standards? Yes. So this worksheet will help you look back at your experience up to this point and identify what were some of the standards that your DM or DVM held you to that were not unrealistic because you were able to execute on them. So make sure that you do that worksheet, because it will help you with defining standards and expectations. A hint here on this would be to reflect on the 6 lenses of culture that I just shared with you and ask yourself, what is the baseline for you as the manager that you will tolerate? So from a recruiting standpoint, what is the baseline standard for numbers of PR set per week that you, the manager, will tolerate? And then what is the subsequent expectation of that? Well, simple. You hit the number every week by PR calling every single Sunday from 2 to 8 p.m. or whatever your DVM has you in the schedule for. From a sales perspective, if your standard is that once your reps are out of their fast start, they are doing 10 demos per week if they've signified that they're going to be a full-time sales rep, or 5 demos a week if they're going to be a part-time sales rep, well, then you have subsequent expectations that follow along with that. If you are a part-time sales rep, the expectation is that you are at every team meeting phoning, and you are at 1 phone jam on like a Sunday or a Saturday. If you are a full-time rep, you're at every team meeting phoning, and then you're at 2 phone jams per week. You have to figure out what those are for yourself, and you can work with your DM or DVM to define them. But the key here is actually defining them, because you can never uphold a standard that you don't actually know yourself. It's also important to understand what is the plan of action when a rep does not uphold the expectations, because newsflash, you're going to have that. That is going to happen to you throughout the summer, where you clearly define the standard and you clearly define the expectation, but for some reason the rep comes in on advanced training, hasn't called you once, has all no sales, and you ask them, did you read the manual? And they're like, what manual? And your brain will explode. I promise you that. But it's important to define what is your plan of action when something like that happens, so that way in the moment you have a default system that you go to, as opposed to letting your mind explode and then reacting as opposed to responding. So creating that plan of action. Now, I would suggest to give everybody some grace and compassion here. Remember that you're dealing with 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. This is their first real job, and it's their first time being held to high standards. So I would not have a 1-strike policy. I would have probably a 3 to 5 strike policy, but make sure that you acknowledge when somebody is falling beneath the expectations, because when you start to let people slip beneath the expectations, then you start to lower your standards, and that's when you begin to lower the line of what you tolerate, and that's when you duplicate poor behavior. So it's important that you acknowledge when somebody misses the expectation. Step number 2, affirm that their success is your #1 priority. So by the way, defining your standards and expectations is work that you do on your own. This is not work that you do in front of your reps. This is preparation work. Now, step number 2 is when you're actually in front of your reps. It's important that you affirm that their success is your number 1 priority, and you're sharing the why behind that, or you're sharing basically when you are affirming that their success is your number 1 priority, you are sharing with them why you're going to hold them to a high standard and expectation, because you as the manager know this is what will create success for them. So once you have affirmed that to them, that's when you share, right? If you share before you affirm, then it can create some weird dynamics. So you affirm, then you share. Every rep, every single rep must know what your standards are and what is expected of them, as well as what is to be expected from you as the manager if the rep is not upholding the expectations. So you should tell them, hey guys, listen, the standard is that you reach out to me every single day during your first weekend, because the goal here is that you reach your first promotion in your first weekend, that you make $100 by the time you come back on Monday. What does that look like from you? What are the actions that you take? Well, that means that after every demo, you call in for PDI. Now, if we get to the advanced training on Monday and you walk into the office and I have not heard from you once this weekend, we're going to have a chat, and it's not going to be a fun chat. I like fun chats. That will not be one of them. Please don't make me have a not fun chat with you on the 3rd day of your job here. Cool? Something simple like that. And so as long as you are making sure that they are very clear on what your standard is as a manager and what is expected of them as the rep and what will happen if they don't hit it, it will really begin to sink in with them what's actually expected. Number 4, step 4, after you've shared with them, that's when you ensure understanding and agreement. So after I've gone through that whole, I don't want to have a bad conversation on your 3rd day of the job, you follow it up with a very simple question. Does this sound fair to you? If you and I have ever coached one-on-one before, you've heard me ask that question when we've gone over the expectations and standards. I say, does this sound fair to you? And if we were in person, I'd probably nod my head. And you'd probably nod your head back and say, yes, that sounds fair. You want to do that in a group setting, and then you also want to do it in a one-on-one setting. You can even add in there, is there anything I'm missing? And this gives them the opportunity to feel like they're able to give their 2 cents, especially if they're a little bit rebellious. And you can also ask, can you think of anything else I should add? These are just additional ways to get them more enrolled in the standards and expectations that you're setting. Okay, step 5. Reaffirm that their success is your number 1 priority. Again, it will emphasize the reason why you just covered the standards and expectations in so much depth. And then finally, this step comes after you've kind of gone through a couple weeks with your people. You celebrate those who exceed the expectations. You don't celebrate those who meet the expectations, because that's what they're supposed to do, right? That's their job. But those who continuously exceed, that's who you celebrate, because the same way you duplicate what you tolerate, you also duplicate what you celebrate. So when you celebrate high expectations, you're going to encourage others to do the same. Okay, that was all about standards and expectations. Now let's move on to the second component of the framework that I mentioned. We're going to move on to values. Again, those are the beliefs that drive our actions. You, the manager, convey the values, and you live the values. It's very important. You convey them, as in you share them, and you also live them. You, the manager, teach your team about the values through actively discussing them with your team and sharing what they mean from an action standpoint. So it's one thing to say, we here at the Cherry Hill Challengers operate under the value of integrity. It's another thing to actually talk with your people about what does it mean to have integrity. Because you have to remember that most of the people that are walking through your door have never really had an experience where we operate under such high values. They're coming off of their senior year of high school where you bet they didn't act in integrity because they were probably sneaking out of their parents' house at 2 a.m. in the morning to meet up with somebody. So reminding them of what does it mean from an action standpoint to act in a certain value. Here's an advanced skill, by the way. So for the senior branches or for those who feel like you're really understanding this, here's an advanced skill as it pertains to the values. Create short sayings that relate to each value that you can repeat over and over and over again. So what do I mean by that? So again, going back to the example I gave, one of the core office values is integrity. Here's a one-word phrase. Here in the Cherry Hill Challenger's office, we do what we say we're going to do. Another example. One of our core office values is hard work. Here in the Cherry Hill Challenger's office, we always give our 100% effort. Or here's another example. Here in the Cherry Hill Challenger's office, we never finish a task without asking ourselves, did we give 100%? Now, here's the reason why we do the one-word statements. Because it sits with people. It's memorable and it anchors what you talked about with them. So after you have this discussion about what does it mean, you share that one-word statement, and then you, as the manager during PDI, can pick a random day and say, hey guys, here in the Cherry Hill Challenger office, we do what we're saying we're gonna do. Give me the good news. And that can be your opening line for PDI. And it'll bring your people back to the importance of that value. Second thing that is great about this one-liner is that you, as the manager, you probably noticed that I started every single one-liner with here in the blank blank office, because it reminds your people that they are part of a team. They are part of a culture. Is this hitting with everybody? Thumbs up. Cool. Is this good stuff? I don't see the group chat going off. I don't know if it's my computer broken or people just are not chatting. But anyways, how to uphold the office values. Number one, define them. So take time to really think this through. What are the core values that you'd like your office to operate by? And I wouldn't choose more than 4. I know you could probably pick everyone under the sun, but choosing more than 4 can get a little overwhelming and nobody's perfect. So I would choose between 2 to 4. Number 2, share them. So this probably sounds familiar to the standards and expectations, right? Share them both in person and I would say on your office walls. I would print out a big poster board with your office values. I would put it up on your wall. That will remind you to always talk about it, but it will also remind your people that you operate under values, which is a very important trait of a leader. Number 3, discuss them with your team. Hey, how do you live out these values? Hey, here's how I live out these values. What are some traits of people who operate within these values? That can be a team meeting exercise. That can be a PC exercise. That can be a 15-minute icebreaker exercise during day 2 of training. There's just a lot of opportunity to really anchor deep into what these values mean. Number 4, ensure accountability. Being part of the Cherry Hill Challengers means that you live out these values. I'm going to hold you to that. Is that fair? That's a question you would ask your people. Again, it's being part of the insert office name here means that you live out these values. I'm going to hold you to that. Is that fair? And the important thing is that that comes after the discussion, because you have to give your people time to create a deeper connection to the values. Otherwise, it's not fair to ask them if they want to live by them, if they haven't yet taken the time to actually understand them. And then number 5 is to share them again and again and again and again. And you can do that via the one-word phrase. You can just do that via having the discussion over and over again. Okay, the third component of the framework is vision. That is what keeps us going. It's the target that we're striving towards. You, the manager, create the vision for the summer. You, the manager, drive the ship towards the target. You, the manager, share the vision with your team early and often. Now, this vision is not to be confused with your rep's vision for success. That's a different conversation that does not necessarily come into play when you're creating an office culture. It comes into play when you're creating a plan and you're having really powerful conversations with your reps one-on-one, but this is specifically about the office vision. What are we as the team driving towards? It comes up in the what I am building message. Now, I don't know if every single region has this, but the Midwest region does a phenomenal job of teaching the importance of the what I'm building message. And Rihanna Raymond, reason why she's on this call is because, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why is because she had a phenomenal what I'm building message this past summer, something that moved people and something that really showed her heart and her dedication to this team. It's no wonder that she recruited 108 people and had a summer of $244,000 of sales. And she repeated that what I'm building message every single team meeting. And it got to a point where eventually she could delegate that task to an AM, because that AM has heard that what I'm building message 5 or 6 times, and they can now give it. And that is when you're really creating a culture, when you can delegate something as important as that to someone and you can trust that they're going to deliver at a high quality. So, how to turn your vision into reality. Number 1, create the vision. Define the vision. What are you building? How big of a team are you aiming for? Are you competing nationally? What will the team look like? What will the team feel like? What will the conversations sound like? What will the end of the summer be like? Share that vision early and often. Share it briefly during the interview process. If accepted, so you share it during the interview process briefly, like a 3-sentence synopsis of this grand vision. And then I would actually suggest during the post-interview, you say, if accepted, is the vision for success that I shared briefly during the group interview something that you could get behind and support? Okay, I'll say it again. If accepted, is the vision for success that I shared briefly during the group interview something that you could get behind and support? Share it during every team meeting. The same message over and over again, and eventually you will delegate it to an AM. Number 3, the step 3 is to track the team's progress towards that vision. It's one thing to say it over and over again. It's an entirely different conversation to be like, guys, you know that vision I've been talking about over and over and over again? We're making it reality. That is a goosebump worthy moment for a lot of people. So make sure that you are tracking the progress towards the vision and you're letting your people know where you're at. And listen, if you're not there, share that too and turn it into an empowering message towards success. Number 4, so I put number 3, track the team's progress towards turning the vision into reality, and number 4 was keep the team informed on the progress, but I just kind of mashed that all together. So number 4/5 is to celebrate individual contributions often. Chances are you will have 3 or 4 people who kind of take this by themselves and they run with it. And those are your rabbits, those are your top 20%. Those people are really valuable and they're the ones who create the culture. But it's important that you also acknowledge the small instances of going towards the vision that individual contributors might make. If someone's not a big salesperson, but they're a big PR person, that's worth recognizing. If someone's not a big PR person, but they're, they had their first $1,000 week, that's worth recognizing. You'll have the 10K fast starters, you'll have the 4K per week salespeople, but it's important to also acknowledge the smaller contributions, because a big army always beats a small army, and you want to recognize every person's individual contributions. And then number 6 is to express gratitude always. This is your vision, right? This is what you are driving your team towards. And while you are the catalyst for success in your office, and you are responsible for guiding your team towards success, they are still the people who are behind the scenes when you're the one getting recognition on the stage. So it's important that you are constantly expressing gratitude to your team and never for 1 minute letting them feel like they're being taken advantage of or they're doing all the dirty work and you're getting all the rewards. Okay, so constantly express gratitude to your team. All right, the fourth and final component, and then we will move into the question and answer with Nathan and Rihanna. The mission. This is, so the reason why I said before that it's not necessarily in order of importance, because I think that, going back to what I just shared, I do think that values and standards and expectations are all very important at the same level, but I do think that mission comes after vision. And the reason why I say this is because it's sometimes difficult to create a mission when you don't have a vision. So it's important that you create the vision first, and from the vision, your mission will likely reveal itself. So some really simple examples of a mission could be to be the best branch that insert territory has ever seen. But I would encourage you to dig deeper. Miranda McAllister, a top branch manager from both 2018 and 2019, shared this on a recent call. If your why doesn't make you cry, then it's not strong enough. Now, I believe in that, but I also am a very emotional person. You could show me a video of a baby and I'll start crying. For some of you, that might not be the case, and you're like, I'm never gonna cry over a why. Like, this is not that serious. So that's okay. It doesn't always have to bring you to tears, but the purpose of that statement is just to encourage you to really get deep and create a genuine connection with that mission that you're on, that why, the bigger picture. What are you doing, not just for yourself, but for your team, the individuals, the territory, the company, the brand, the future of the world, if you want to get that grandiose. It's also important to recognize this is not your personal why, this is your team why. So get off self and on others. This will likely have influence from your values and your vision. So when I say that, what I mean is that it's important that you define your vision first, and then ask yourself the question, why is this vision so powerful? Why is this vision so important to me and ultimately important to my team? And from those questions, your mission will begin to emerge. And your mission helps reps understand there is something more than just selling knives and having a big push report. It creates a deeper appreciation for their role and their effort. But again, I would keep it simple, 1 to 2 sentences. I believe Rihanna's from last summer was to impact 100 souls. I loved that. And she did it. She accomplished her mission. And you heard her mission in her vision statement. And in her vision statement, she explained what that meant. And once she explained it, that simple mission of to impact 100 souls had such a deeper meaning behind it. Her vision helps amplify the mission, and the mission helps simplify the vision. So they work in tandem. I'll say it again. Her vision, or your vision, the vision, helps amplify the mission, and the mission helps simplify the vision. So the 4-step process to getting clear on your mission. Again, number 1, it's important to define your vision first. And then number 2, ask yourself, why is this vision so powerful? Why is this vision so important to me? And ultimately to my team. Number 3, from your answers, begin brainstorming 1 or 2 liners that encapsulate what you just came up with. And then number 4, share it early and often. Interviews, training, team meetings, in writing, on your office walls, everywhere. Everybody that has been with you for at least a week, which means that they've been with you through the interview process, through the training process, and at least 1 team meeting, should know your mission, because you should have shared with them at least 3 times, but likely more. So it's really that important that you get clear on all of this. We're going to head into the Q&A session in 2 minutes here, but I want to give you all a few outside resources. Number 1, The Culture Solution by Matthew Kelly. Again, there will be an opportunity for now 2 of you to earn the book after the call is over. Christina, Anna, and Ruth Ann, you've already won the book. Congratulations. So that's 1, The Culture Solution by Matthew Kelly. Number 2, The Energy Bus by John Gordon. This is not necessarily about culture, but it talks about how to execute on getting people bought into your team. So that's a really, really valuable lesson as well. I did a branch impact call all about the Energy Bus last year. So if you go to my YouTube channel and search in playlists, you can see the branch impact calls from 2019, and you can actually find that call there. And then the final resource, and actually probably the best resource, is the Isaac Tolpin episode of Changing Lives Selling Knives. If you haven't listened to that, I suggest listening to it and have your notebook out, because it is so amazing. And he talks about how he went from a $5 million division to an $11 million division in 1 year. And he references the power of one-liners. So if you want to take advantage of that advanced skill I shared with you, listen to that episode, because it will really make a difference. Okay, like I said, Q&A will be after this call, after the panels. But let's bring on our 2 panelists here. We have Nathan Alvarado and Rihanna Raymond, both from the Midwest region. Rihanna and Nathan were both senior branch managers in 2019. I know Nathan's going to be a new district manager this upcoming summer, and Rihanna will be a pilot sales manager for a budding new division in Michigan. Rihanna last summer landed the number 4 spot nationwide with $220,000 of sales. I mentioned this earlier. She recruited 108 people. So she knew how to really, really drive a recruiting culture and a sales culture. Nathan, he landed the number 15 spot nationwide and had a total sales report of 144,000. Now he only recruited 37 people, but had a very high PPR. So he can really talk at length about creating a sales culture and a competitive culture. I actually had the privilege of stopping by his team meeting over the summer, and we had a great time. I got to meet some of his people, and when I say competitive, they were competitive. So Rihanna and Nathan, thank you both so much for jumping on. So the first question I have for you, and Rihanna, why don't you go first, ladies first, and then Nathan, you'll follow up with her. Rihanna, looking back on your first summer and prepping for your branch in 2018, can you remember how you viewed culture, and how did that view shift or solidify during your first summer as a branch manager? And Rihanna, you are frozen. Am I frozen now? Or can you guys see me? Yes or no? No?